Hey everyone, I'm rather incoherent. About a year ago, I made an archetype spotlight for the Big Money Rogue, but I've grown as a player since then. I don't like some of the things I said in the original video, and the game has had a new expansion that changed a lot of things. So I'm going to revisit the archetype, talk about the concept of tempo versus setup time, how to build into a Big Money deck, and then get into the Scarlet Keys cards, how they interact with it, why I think Big Money has been buffed even harder than it used to be, the gravitational pull has gotten stronger, and I want to talk about a new archetype for fighters using Big Money that I refer to as Dirty Money, where the core set of cards is extended to include abusing the ever-living shit out of the new Dirty Fighting card, which is a really well-designed card. It is, in my opinion, the most elegant card in all of Arkham Horror, and it does wonders to reinvigorate all of the bad rogues that try to fight and can't really do it up until now, without buffing Tony Morgan at all. But let's get into all of that later. First, let's talk about why I dislike this deck, and one of the main impetus for me making this video. Double-double. Double-double shouldn't be in this deck. This is some Innsmouth shit. This is what that is. You shouldn't have 64 experience in your deck. Double-double is a trap card as well, because let's go over to double-double. Double-double isn't just an 8 experience card, it costs 4 resources. It's such a hassle to get this into play, and it vastly increases your setup time. It doesn't just cost you 4 resources. You'll be sitting in the game with an easy mark in your hand, and you should be playing that easy mark. But you're like, man, I don't know. I could just draw looking for double-double, and then suddenly my easy mark gets a lot better. I feel real bad if I draw a double-double and I just played all these events without it. So not only is it adding a lot of experience and a lot of setup time just on its own, but it's encouraging you to play for an even greedier, slower setup build. And this argument of tempo versus setup time is very core to how to optimize any character, but especially a Big Money rogue. In my recent Edge of the Earth playthrough as Finn, I had more setup than I should have, and it was greatly to the detriment of the deck. And we'll be talking about all of that in a little bit, but first, a brief introduction on my experience with Big Money rogues. I am my table's a resident rogue player. I have played every rogue except for Monterey Jack. He's not really a rogue anyway, though. I have played all of them with the exceptions of Safina and Winifred as Big Money decks. I've played some of them as not Big Money decks in addition to that, but Big Money's gravitational pull means it's always on your peripheral at the very least. You're always thinking about it. I played Preston Fairmont as a Big Money deck, but really importantly, the Big Money cards are expensive, and without all of them, the combo doesn't really work that well. So rather than starting as a Big Money deck in Preston, what you do is you start as a Dark Horse deck and you bank some experience and you use adaptables and you transition from Dark Horse into Big Money at some point. And it's one of the reasons I like Preston so much. He's probably one of my favorite investigators just because of such an interesting build path that he has by doing that. And this upgrade path for Preston is going to be reminiscent about my general advice for Big Money that I'll be giving shortly. Coming over to a Trish deck that I would currently endorse. It's much less experience intensive, it's only got 48, which when you're talking about in the thick of it builds with Karen's Oval, they get 17 free experience over the course of an 8 scenario campaign. This is a 31 experience deck. You can get this in Dunwich, man. This is not an expensive deck. It's got the red clock combo just like the other deck, but instead of going for the Pendant of the Queen, we're putting it on Divination now. Divination just takes up less slots in the deck. You're able to move so quickly that you don't really need to teleport, you're able to evade any enemy with well connected, so you don't really need to trip people. So essentially, Divination's getting you half a clue compared to Pendant of the Queen getting you a full clue when you throw charges off the red clock onto Divination. And this is all Trish specific, this isn't really part of the Big Money stuff. The big thing is that with double-double out, we can slim down the deck a lot. And again, coming back over to this version of the deck, you can see that in addition to having ran double-double, I'm also running 2 copies of Hot Streak 4, and that's just overkill on the economy. There's no reason to be running this. Likewise, I'm running intel reports. The hot streaks are basically just to afford the intel reports, which are only really worth it because I'm double-doubling them in the first place. This whole package is 16 experience that you can just cut from the deck, and you'll be relatively the same. So it's just complete overkill, and there's no reason to do it. Instead, what you do is you just run the amount of economy you'll need. This is a deck driven by consistency. You're using Relic Hunters and Lucky Cigarette Case 3s and Mr. Rooks to go through your deck, get your cards in the order you need them, burn through Astounding Revelations to go faster, get economy quicker, and what you're setting up towards is you're gonna have 3 base actions, then 4, then 5 and 6 from the red clock. You're investigating at 4 base, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you have 5, 6 actions at base 8 to investigate every turn. That's the core draw of a Big Money deck, by the way. When you're doing the setup for Big Money, you're looking at well connected so you don't die to the Mythos phase, and then you put in the Black Fan for +1 everything and an additional action. And this is getting expensive in experience, and you need a lot of economy events, and the easy solution here is to cut your skills entirely throw in a Gios, now you don't need the skills in the first place, you get another +1 to everything. And now that you're not running skills and you're sort of struggling for value, a haste fits in well, because if you're just pulling from the bag over and over to stab a guy or investigate, the additional actions are really easy to get with haste. And it all just works really well together. And other characters that don't have access to the red clock, they would usually be running a Leo instead of an Eldritch Sophist, but potato in this case. And the important thing you have to remember whenever you're building a big money deck, whenever you're building any setup deck, comes down to tempo versus setup time. Tempo is the pace of the game. If you have high tempo, you're going at a very fast pace. This deck doesn't have a single tempo card. If we were to come over to like a tempo Trish instead, this deck has like practice makes perfect into deduction or perception on the first action. Let's say you hit deduction, you play a perception from hand. You succeed, you get 3 clues, you draw 2 cards, you play a Leo DeLuca, you investigate with the other perception from your hand, you succeed, you get a money, you draw 2 cards. On turn 1, you just got 4 clues, drew 4 cards, gained a resource, played a Milan. That's huge tempo. The fear when you make a tempo deck is the opposite of a combo deck, or the opposite of a setup deck rather. With a tempo deck, you need to get so much value because you're going fast initially that when you eventually run out of steam, you just win anyway, it doesn't matter. Conversely, with a setup deck, you need to get enough of a powerful engine running, get enough extra actions, enough power from those actions, that when you finally do start playing the game, you make up for all the time you've lost. One isn't inherently better than the other, though players will tend to gravitate towards one or the other. I myself very obviously gravitate towards setup decks as opposed to tempo decks, and this is only further harmed by the fact that I keep playing rogues and I can't come up with a single good reason not to play this archetype. But with these setup decks, it's really important to put down a cutoff point. Once you've done enough, stop putting assets in the deck. You don't need more, you're making it worse. Here's a hyperbolized, extreme example. Let's say the 80th card you put in your deck gets you like literally 100 clues a turn, right? That's insane. You're gonna win the game next turn. But also the game ended like around card like 35 or 40, right? You literally cannot set up that long. At some point, setting up for more value is called losing the game. You need to actually go play the game. And Double crosses that line really aggressively. This is about the asset pile you want to be looking at. You want to be looking at most like 5 turns of playing assets. And this is straddling that line, but it makes it there. And then it's getting so many extra actions that it will make up for the time lost once it's fully set up. And a really important thing with any combo deck. Sorry, combo and setup I use almost interchangeably. I only use the hashtag combo, it's dumb stuff like this Eldritch Sophist Red Clock combo. But generally speaking, every setup deck is to some degree a combo deck. One of the pitfalls that you can come into with combo decks is if you have a specific thing where you can't play the game without it. In this case, there's no card where if it's not in play, I'm just screwed. You never want to be in a situation where you're like, oh man, I don't have X, I draw a card. You want to be in a situation where you've set up, you played, let's say, Magnifying Glass, Haste, Mr. Rook, Death. You don't have any of your big money stuff yet. You don't want to draw a card. You can just be like, I investigate twice, I use Haste to investigate a 3rd time. Whenever you're making a setup deck, it's really, really important that you don't just have to use draw actions if you miss something. That you can just play with the pieces that you have and wait to naturally draw into the things you're looking for or the draw cards to find them. You don't ever want to be drawing for the stuff you're setting up, because then suddenly you're ballooning this asset cost of 14 play actions into like 14 play actions and 8 draw actions, and we've gone way over the line and we're setting up way too long. Now, on the subject of these big money decks, there is a very clear problem, especially with one that combos like Triss with the red clock. The black van costs 6 experience. And I mean, admittedly, that's like the only card you really need. You might pick up a Payday or a Hot Streak or something as well. But that's still a lot of experience, and if you upgrade this first, your deck sorta sucks. And that gets into the best things about Rogue. It's adaptable. Coming over this tempo deck, you'll notice that I've only upgraded 2 cards that weren't in that final list. Like, yeah, I can run the Practice Makes Perfect setup in Trish, and it's incredible, it's one of the best cards in the game, but instead, I could just not upgrade them. And this is 16 experience of upgrades for an incredibly fast, high-tempo deck. And we can start using Adaptable and our experience from this point onwards to switch into big money later. Frequently in decks like this, I would find a cut somewhere and run a 2-of well-connected and a little bit more economy. I think this gets enough clues that you don't need Intel Report and the deck is just better with well-connected, so that's a change I would make. But this is extremely tilted towards tempo right now. Because well-connected makes it a more natural transition, it makes you safer to the Mythos deck. This deck doesn't really have much in the way of Crypt Shield fodder, and well-connected, in the worst case, can always be thrown away to Crypt Shield, which is not how you want it to pass Crypt Shield with well-connected, but it does work. The really important things about big money are understanding when to stop setting up, not going too far into it. If you're thinking about using hidden pockets to play the second lockpick, just stop. You've gone off the deep end. You've gone too far. I did that with Finn on the Edge of the Earth. It's a mistake. You never have that much time to set up. If you're thinking about playing double-double, odds are you've gone too far. What you really want to do is have a reasonable cutoff point. In this case, we're like straddling the edge, but it's just enough that you get away with it. And then you want an upgrade path into it that makes sense. And as rogues with adaptable, you can make really high tempo early decks that gradually transition into this around scenarios 3 or 4 depending on the campaign. And that, I think, is like core to just playing big money well. As someone who has played like 1 big money character for every 3 characters I've played, I feel confident in saying that at this point in time. And coming over to my Finn Flex deck from Edge of the Earth. 26 assets is admittedly a lot, but they're not all really in the deck because I'm running, what is it called? Underworld Market all the way down here. It's a very long deck list. So 10 of these cards aren't actually in the deck. Which 10? We got Hidden Pockets and Finn Signatures being ripped out of the deck. And then 6 assets over here. We have Knuckle Duster, 2 Lockpicks, 1 Dirty Fighting, 2 Embezzled Treasure. So we do have a 20 asset deck, and that's too much. We aren't planning on playing Lanier the Second Trenchcoat. Those are just there for consistency. We have to hit them. Same with Second Haste. And the reason we have 2 Haste here, and I usually don't have that, is if you are making a deck that has too many cards in it, then you really want to have like a second copy of Leo and a second copy of Haste to consistently get those extra actions to set up faster, which is not a sentence you want to utter. But once you're in the 8th scenario and you realize what you've done, you start buying second Haste to try to fix the deck. And this deck worked, it was good, but it could have been done so much better. So let's show a different Finn deck that's been optimized a little bit. Coming down to a much better version of the deck, we're down to 47 experience, so we've cut 6 experience and 4 assets. You can see we've cut one of those hidden pockets to more reliably hit our Knuckle Duster. I've also cut Milan, and I've changed our role from Flex to Fighter with a hashtag technically Flex. Because I will carry my weight on clues. I will get 1 player clues per round, most rounds, by using lockpicks. But that's all I'm doing. I'm not leaning towards clues at all. I'm just going to carry some weight with lockpicks while I happen to be main fighting, because that really is the deck's job. And the big struggle with a deck like this is making sure you're good at fighting in scenario 1. And Finn, that will likely result in using shenanigans like the 45 Thompson and scrounge for supplies and the act of desperation to throw it at someone and pick it back up, and contraband to get more bullets on it eventually. But you can do stuff like that, and I have a parallel Skids deck that does just that and works as a level 0 fighter, so I expect you can make it work in Finn as well. The other changes beyond cutting Milan and beyond the switch of Hidden Pocket for consistency and Knuckle Duster, we've cut a Milan, we've cut a second copy of Haste, and we've cut our second Well Connected. So we have 3 new deck slots, and those go over to Crack the Case for more and faster economy, and a copy of You Handle This One for better Mythos resilience. This You Handle This One could really be anything. It doesn't need to be this, it's basically a filler card at this point, but the deck is just much smoother now. It's got better economy, better team utility because Crack the Case can be used on its teammates, less setup time, more consistency. The deck is just tremendously better by having reduced the setup time. And if I had played with this deck and my Edge of the Earth campaigns, rather than being confused at my shit performance in scenarios 6 and 7 on Finn, I think he'd have just done fine. But I was committed to being a flex character and getting the second lockpicks and playing Milan. And boy howdy did I never have time to do all of that. Now, talking about this parallel Skids deck shows off a lot of what I'm talking about with prioritizing tempo over setup time on big money characters. He's got a 20 card deck, 25 base for being parallel, down to 20 for running Underworld support, giving him unparalleled consistency. He gets more money per turn, so he needs to run less economy, and he's turning skills into money, so he's got more economy, as well as like weird utility for like draw 2 as a fast action with manual decks, nimble as shortcut, all that sort of stuff. He's able to do really weird things where he gambles with quick thinking during the enemy phase after they move to dodge people who just engaged him, which is sick. And it's a great showcase for that balance between setting up quickly and getting the minimum stuff you need to do your job, and then playing the game. This is like the exact midpoint. This is where you want your character to live. Most characters have more stuff going on than parallel Skids. This deck is incredibly tight. It only has 20 cards. There's not a lot of room for anything. So yeah, absolutely, I would love a Leo DeLuca. In fact, I have a charisma for story assets here, which is a little bit weird. But even in this deck, like, what do you cut? Watch this? Maybe? I don't even know. Like, there's not a good cut for the Leo. It's just such a hard deck to fit more assets into, and that's where you want to live. You want to live in a place where you set up towards something really strong, and there's more you could do, but it's just time to go. It's just really important that you avoid making the mistakes this Finn deck did. With Underworld Market, you can still have like a 20 asset deck that actually makes sense and works and pays off for its setup time, but you've gotta cut it off somewhere. You have to know when to stop. And to briefly show off that it works in every character, here's just like a quick Tony deck. Like, same stuff, same as all of them. He's not running Dirty Fighting, he's just normal big money, because like, what's he gonna do, evade with Well Connected? He's probably using this during the Mythos phase. He doesn't want to upgrade this. It just is unnecessary in Tony. You're already getting the +2 fist and the bonus action. It just catches up a 3-fist character where Tony started. It's very funny. But this archetype fits on everyone. 5-fist is great, but when you're fighting a 4-fist enemy and your Knuckle Duster is giving you 0 and your Switchblade is only giving you 2 insofar as you hit for 1 if you would have missed, like, it's just really nice to have a bunch of plus numbers added to that 5. Every single character tremendously benefits from this stuff. Every fighter that isn't Tony looks at Dirty Fighting, and it just recontextualizes the whole character and pushes them even further into big money. And it's not immediately obvious that Dirty Fighting wants to be in a big money deck. It's like, hey, everyone wants this, right? How are you planning on boosting both of these stats? Like, you can't just swing at 5 and hope it'll work. If a Guardian walks into a late game scenario with just a machete and 4 fists, they're gonna suck at their job. That's what Dirty Fighting with a Knuckle Duster is. Lonnie gets you to 6, that's still not great. It's passable in standard at least, but it's not great. And then you have to evade them. That's a really important part of this. You've only got 4 foot. What cards are you running to boost your foot? Are you running manual dexes, so you have a limited number of uses of Dirty Fighting per scenario, basically? Are you running assets that boost your foot? If you are, why weren't you just running the Black Fan instead? And also, the assets that boost your foot in green aren't that good. Red gets Track Shoes, they get Pete Sylvester. If you have access to red cards, you have great ways to pump your foot. But this is like, you get the Tarot, Cat Burglar. You want to run Lonnie, you want to run Leo, but you could run Delilah or Lola. Those are essentially 6 experience allies because you need them and the charismas. And yeah, it's just really, really hard to justify pumping your foot as well as pumping your fist unless you're doing big money to do them both naturally, and then Dirty Fighting works so seamlessly in that deck. And I feel like this is a little bit rambling and all over the place. I hope that gives some insight into how I play rogues and why I play rogues the way that I do. And I'm gonna be very sad when I finally play Winifred on the channel and I play her as a big money character somehow. I really hope she isn't good at big money. I really hope I don't find a way to fit that in the deck, because God knows it shouldn't be. Anyways, I've been rather coherent. Hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about rogues and big money and Dirty Fighting. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff really does help the channel grow, and I'll see you in the next one.